Day 5 of Tip Tanks. If you watch day 4, you'll realize that we had a real boo-boo on that right wing because we didn't install it quite right. And now it's finally looking better. So what we're doing is we're setting it up with the actual holes that we want to have, which we actually didn't even need to do. What we really should have done in this case was just have them fill the holes. So if you do misdrill, get someone who's a good fiberglass fabricator to repair your damage and then redo it in the proper way, like we're doing here on the left side. So Anthony is helping me get everything situated. We're trying to find out exactly how much metal we want to cut off, because if you cut off too much, then you pretty much have this nice hole where the leading edge meets the tip tank, and it's a very small amount that you want to trim off. And here I am doing that removal right there with the cutting blade, the cutting tool. Now we're putting it back on, seeing how it was fitting on. It's a pretty tight, snug fit, so expect that you're going to have to kind of move it around a little bit and fuss with it because you really want it to settle pretty deep in there. Now we're trying to see how the vent lines are going to line up with the vent holes that are on the tip tank itself for when fuel is expanding or you overfill it. It's got somewhere to go out the drain lines. And we were probably looking at something else I can't quite recall. So that's us looking at how the hole sits at that front end, and then looking at where the trim spot is at the back where it meets the aileron. Now I'm just cleaning up, trimming down a little bit more, shaping, getting rid of any high edges so that we can get that on properly. Now that we've got it on, I take that masking tape trick where we set it up pretty much exactly where we want, make sure it's really far on there. So I was pushing harder to give us that extra 1/8 of an inch, because again, it's only on there by about 3/4 to an inch max of overlap. And now we get to do a measurement, note the distance and the millimeters that it is away, so that when we do drill through the fiberglass, it'll go through in the right spot, not the wrong spot. So we use 2 drill bits for that process. One is to basically get the pilot hole started. The next one is to go all the way through for the size of the screw bolt that we're using. I said screws before, but really they're bolts with a Phillips that then get attached with a nut on the back side. So there it is. Again, take off the plastic. It's going to get dirty, but your painters are going to be able to strip all that as long as you're relatively clean. Strip all that before they do their base paint, base coat. And that's what it ends up looking like. And of course you can see that we'll fill that with some caulk in the front where it sits proud of the leading edge. And again, it might be slightly different for yours versus this one, how it's set up, what type of damage. Here are the strobes from Wheelan Aerospace, which we love. And so it's got the strobe and the position lights in there. We're just trying to figure out how to best attach it. So we figured out a solution that we would then trace around it, get it as level as possible, and set up for where we're going to be drilling it later in the next video. Anthony's starting to crack open the fuel covers, which were super tight on. I was impressed with how much pressure he had to do to impact wrench and get those screws out. So at some point, I forgot totally when I actually did do this, but I put together the inspection plate where we added the power supply that connects to the nav lights and draws low voltage power to power a USB charger for GoPro or Insta360, whatever camera you want to put on. And so I ended up crafting this with Anthony's help to figure out how we were going to use this inspection plate to double as a support for that USB charger and the power supply unit that we then were going to tie into the nav lights, so that the nav lights, when you turn on the position lights, would actually draw power to that location. And it serves a great function. You usually want your nav lights on, even if it's during the day. It's just helpful to add a little bit extra visibility. And It's really simple. It doesn't take as much power as the strobes, and you don't have the strobes on all the time, whereas nav lights work pretty well. So we're just going through, drilling out the various holes, step drilling right here to get the proper size for that USB connection location, and then also reaming out some of the countersunk holes for the screws that then hold down the power supply. This is a little tricky because of just how they build it and how much room they give you. So it was nice having a selection of screws that Anthony had on hand to test and get the right ones to fit. And there it is, final product. And it came out pretty sweet, actually. Then we'd have to disassemble it all because we're gonna prime it and paint it, but at least this is dialed in. Now I did that inner Sharpie line so I could tell where I need to be without violating and getting in the way of the nut plates on the other side. So then you just secure that USB charger location in there with that piece, and you're all set. It was a pretty sweet setup. I got this at Oshkosh, you know, a little spendy like everything in aviation, but built well, and they got a lot of testing and background behind it. And I really liked how clean and seamless it is. So now we have it on the outside of the 206 and it works great. There you go, plugging in the USB into that power supply. And then this is a mounting bracket that we were looking at for underneath for connecting the ball mount that this company also offers. And I'm just putting this in here so that I can see roughly what it looks like, but it gets mounted to the outside. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest.